Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss the public statements that Team Brexit have been making to remind us that we're still headed for the transition period cliff edge at the end of 2020. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, it was only a few weeks ago that a very pro-Tory and pro-Brexit newspaper, the Daily Telegraph, was writing that the government were preparing to initiate an extension to the transition period and were just waiting for the most politically judicious time to do so. Now, they work in conjunction with senior ministers, so they wouldn't have written that just off the bat. Whether it was because they had some great insight, which you would assume whenever they write things like this, it usually means they have been told something, or whether the government were using them just to test the waters, I can't really say at this point. Because at the time, of course, it made perfect sense. Despite what they tell their supporters, Johnson and his crew know how damaging a hard Brexit is going to be to the economy. And not just damaging in the same way as their austerity measures, which they could hide as the millions most obviously affected have little voice in the country because, unfortunately, don't go out and vote. But it would be really damaging in a way that brings it home to the majority. So, spending their way out of the drop was the hope to disguise the impact. That's what they started to do at the beginning of this year. But the coronavirus crisis is going to make that impossible. A government can't borrow endless amounts. And the more you borrow, well, the more you have to repay. Of course, that means less for public spending. In addition, the unemployment that the current crisis has caused means lower tax receipts for next year. Even those furloughed at home who haven't actually lost their jobs are paying less tax because their income is lower. Same for people like me who are still working normally, but earning less means paying less tax next year. So edging towards extending was the only decision possible. But it seems the lunatics have other ideas. Dominic Raab said in Parliament, before it sort of stopped sitting, that now is the perfect time to go ahead with Brexit. In actual fact, it's a better time to go ahead. This is really the point at which I thought, actually, do you know what? They may just be insane enough to go for the hard Brexit in the middle of a global recession. Because if you were edging towards extending and you were just trying to lay the groundwork in the public's eye, you would say that you have no plans to extend first. That's what a politician always says when they've absolutely got plans to do something, but they don't want to announce it just yet. They say, I've got no plans to do that. Because plans can always change. But if you say that the circumstances make Brexit an even better idea, you have nowhere else to climb down from. Because if later on they then try to move towards extending, people will say, well, you said that the current crisis makes Brexit an even better idea. And if the crisis has got even worse, surely it's an even better idea. And you can't just go, well, maybe I was wrong. Ministers don't get away with that. There aren't even any meaningful talks going on. The last round took place remotely, but were a complete waste of time, as far as I could tell, for two reasons. One, there are a couple of hundred people taking part directly in these talks. You know, the negotiating teams of the EU and the UK comprise a lot of people. I know there's a few key figures that we're sort of made aware of, but there's like 100 aside. You can't have those talks done remotely, efficiently. It would take much longer. And the second thing is that nothing on the original agenda seems to have been discussed. As far as I can tell from the communiques, I wasn't there. They didn't televise the talks. But when you look at what was said afterwards about the talks, they seem to be characterised by the EU wanting the UK to make an unequivocal promise to abide by the legally binding portion of the withdrawal agreement. We all know they don't have to abide by the political statement. I mean, that's worthless. We knew that was worthless from the start. But the legally binding portion, they needed the government to be really clear on exactly what their commitments to it were. And Michael Gove, on behalf of the UK, failed to do so. So we didn't progress the actual talks at all because we shouldn't be discussing whether the UK is going to keep its side of a bargain already struck. We're supposed to be deciding what the next bargain is. So, and it was already unrealistic to conclude talks on a comprehensive trade deal in 2020. Anyway, that was all absolute nonsense. But now the UK has been ramping up the talk of Brexit again. This isn't just me saying Brexit's still on. the government have actually been putting out communications this week to remind us that it's still going on. David Frost, who is the non-ministerial head of talks for the UK, our unelected bureaucrat, tweeted this week that we're still forging ahead with this nonsense. He promised to share further legal text with the EU, without specifying exactly when, and said that next week they'll be able to report on an agreed timetable for the April and May talks. I mean to say, we haven't even concluded the milestones that should have been met so far. There is an imperative to seek an extension before the end of June, if you're going to seek one at all. Doing so afterwards is possible. Despite what some Brexit supporters think, it's absolutely possible, but it is more complicated. It would also come at a higher political cost for the government. So I would definitely say that if an extension has not been sought, if we get to the 1st of July and British ministers haven't sought an extension, then that absolutely means that they intend us to crash out at the end of the year. It doesn't mean to say they wouldn't seek an extension later on, because I don't know on what basis they're not seeking one now. Is it because they believe their own rubbish about the EU backing down and giving Johnson whatever he wants? Whatever it is he wants, because I haven't seen it written down. If he believes that, then there's going to come a point at the end of the year when he realises that's not happening. I mean, they can't anyway. It's impossible what he seems to be asking for. But again, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen these legal texts myself. If that's the case, then yeah, it may change. But what it does mean is, as of the 1st of July, if we haven't sought an extension, they do intend us not to seek one at any point. Then, after David Frost's tweets, Downing Street released a statement. It was around about the same time. They released a statement that ministers remain absolutely committed to post-Brexit negotiations despite the coronavirus crisis. Now, that's their words. Their exact words. So what the government are now saying is not just that ministers are dividing their time between the Brexit talks, which have no chance of success, and the coronavirus crisis. No. They're not saying that ministers are splitting their time between the two, because that itself would be unacceptable, quite frankly. What they're saying is that ministers are prioritising Brexit talks. You know, so a particular minister, you say, that the Prime Minister says, or whoever's deputising now, Dominic Raab at the moment at which I'm recording this, hopefully you'll have better news by the time you actually see this video, says to a minister, I need you to sort this thing out for the Brexit talks next week. Oh yeah, but I've got this thing for dealing with the coronavirus in my department, needs some work, needs my attention. Yeah, the Brexit talks are more important. Oh, are they? All right then. That's what they're saying. It shouldn't even be a case of priorities. The corona crisis is so serious that it should be 100% the sole focus of all ministers, as it is in other more sane countries. That it is not is frankly an unacceptable act that needs pointing out repeatedly from this point onwards. You know, at this point, I have absolutely no idea what their thinking is now. And, you know, when you try to draw inferences, you try to sort of project what government might do in a particular situation, you have to follow a logical path. You might base it on misinformation, you know, that ministers may be seized of, but you follow a logical path. But I can't see the logic. The only hazy logic you can even possibly imagine is maybe they think they can disguise the economic impact of Brexit with the larger shadow of the coronavirus crisis. Yes, they may think that. In this time of crisis, a nation's instinct is to support the government, and that will help them shroud their dirty dealings as well. But the impact on people's lives is going to be devastating. Absolutely devastating. And you're not going to be able to disguise the impact of Brexit with this, just because the economic figures will look bad beforehand and still look bad afterwards. It's not even a case of whether the figures will look worse. Things that will affect people's lives will change overnight. You know, we had the panic buying. Supermarkets, interestingly, say that a lot of that is over and done with now. I have to say, I still can't buy a bag of flour, but, you know, most goods, yeah, are coming back. But oddly enough, I couldn't get any butternut squash either. That was a weird one. Don't know where that comes from. But when we have the panic buying caused by Brexit and there's a disruption to our supply, the shelves will stay empty for longer. That'll be a new thing. That will be a new thing. And it's not just the few million at the bottom of society's pyramid scheme that nobody listens to anyway. This crisis has already hit the middle classes, those people who used to watch Benefit Street on the telly and pour scorn on those in the benefit system. Well, they're there now. Brexit will chain them down to stop many of them ever escaping that current plight. So I have to confess to being genuinely exasperated here. I really thought Brexit would have to be put on hold and would be a problem for later on. But no, apparently we're inviting all 4 of the horsemen of the apocalypse to visit the UK on holiday next year, presumably in the hope that we get it all over and done with in one go. That seems to be the thinking of these mad dogs in Cabinet. So there we are. Hope you found the video interesting. It looks like there are going to be some more Brexit updates to come. If you did enjoy the video, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.